We've got an exclusive interview now, a former top colonel exposing his governor's reckless abuse of power. Oh yes, if this is your first time here and you like our reporting and our exclusive interviews, go ahead and hit that red button down below to subscribe. Just make sure you hit that notification bell. Now, if there's one thing that we have learned during this crisis, it is the one thing we have known about mankind for eons. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And from sea to shining sea, governors are being challenged for their broad overreach and constitutional abuses. While the 10th Amendment states powers not granted to the federal government fall back to the state and to the people respectively, that amendment is not a blank check to abuse power through executive authority. And this has become abundantly clear in the state of Pennsylvania. Rampant abuse of power and policies that are literally costing thousands of lives. My guest today aims to rip the veil back on these abuses of power to hold the tyrants in his state accountable. And the best part is his record of fighting for America. And that should scare the hell out of the spineless politicians who couldn't even identify the barrel of a gun. Doug Mastriano is a combat veteran and the son of a career U.S. Navy man. He was commissioned in the U.S. Army in 1986 and served on the Iron Curtain with the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment in West Germany. While serving along the East German and Czechoslovakian borders, he witnessed the end of the Cold War and thereafter deployed to Iraq for Operation Desert Storm to liberate Kuwait. His regiment led the attack against Saddam's elite Republican Guard forces, and after 9/11, he was the lead planner for the operation to invade Iraq via Turkey. He served 4 years with NATO and deployed 3 times to Afghanistan. He was the director of NATO's Joint Intelligence Center in Afghanistan. He is a doctor of history and has 4 master's degrees: strategy, strategic intelligence, military operations, and air power. So just that list alone should put these politicians in check. He now serves as a senator for the 33rd District in Pennsylvania. Senator, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. And what a crazy time we live in.
Certainly is, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're pushing back. Now, your governor, Tom Wolf, he waited until 8 p.m., long after the evening newscast signed off and many newspapers went to press, to announce that he has now extended his stay-at-home order for most of Pennsylvania until June 4th. Why did he choose to do it at this late hour?
So obviously to get behind the news cycle, he didn't want to be in it. So this is how these kind of snakes operate here. They don't want any accountability. He's enjoying the power that he has. He's the most powerful governor in Pennsylvania history. That's not hyperbole. That's just a fact. And so he just comes out with an edict or a proclamation, no accountability or oversight from the Senate or House, and issues these orders like he's a monarch.
Yeah, well, President Trump visited a medical supply factory in Allentown, Pennsylvania today and commented that Governor Wolf is opening up too slow and that there's no reopening plan. What is your take on this and what's happening?
Yeah, so really the governor's flying by the seat of his pants. There is no plan. And to move us from, he came up with the red, yellow, and green phases, and a portion of the state is in yellow, which is some businesses can operate, but with CDC restrictions and precautions and what have you. But overall, our entire state population, it's less than 1/2 or 1% tested positive, may have had it, could have had it, would have had it, because our Secretary of Health is inflating the numbers. So I'm using the Secretary's numbers. So it's 0.38% of the population has or may have had or could have had the virus, and we're going to shut down and quarantine still an entire state of 13 million people for such a statistically insignificant portion of the population. It just defies reason. So the president is right. The governor is running our economy and our people into the ground. Last night, obviously, I have 250,000 constituents, and my people had to talk to from suicide, just constituents that are just desperate. They've lost everything. And that's the governor unnecessarily driving us down. So for the governor to pick winners and losers, essential, non-essential businesses, who can be open, who can't be open here, it's just ridiculous and out of control.
Now, President Trump was concerned early on, stating that the cure cannot be more damaging than the actual virus itself. Are you seeing that play out in Pennsylvania now with the suicides you just mentioned?
Yeah, it really is. It's far worse. And if you think about this in the context of our leadership, you know, the governor unleashed all kinds of edicts and proclamations here. We're the only state still with real estate closed down. We are one of the only states, or one of the few states here to have no car sales available. And so and the governor was handing out waivers to certain groups and allow them to open and operate with certain conditions. So if one could reopen, why could not all with the same conditions? And so this has sparked a lot of hopelessness and helplessness among the people of Pennsylvania. And that's not hyperbole. I see it every day. I'm in touch with the people. I'm engaging them. And we need some relief. We need some help. And we've lost our freedoms on top of all this.
What are some of the conditions to those waivers you spoke of?
Yeah, so the governor, of course, on 19 March issued his proclamation shutting down the state in effect. They came out with a list of essential, non-essential businesses, and that shut down about 50–60% of our economy. And then the governor turned around and he said, okay, we're going to have exceptions, because the list was very flawed, as you can imagine. And so 44,000 people applied for exceptions. There's 6,000 car dealers, for instance, in Pennsylvania. 20 were given waivers. And the question is, was that political payback? Was that cronyism? Was that friends? I mean, so why did you allow 20 to open up with certain conditions, but not all 6,000 with the same conditions? And that's just endemic of the problem we have here in the state.
Now, President Trump also had choice words for the failed Democrat leadership of Pennsylvania after 11 counties threatened to reopen without the governor's consent. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so finally, 11 counties rose up and said, you know what, we're done. And this Friday, literally this Friday, tomorrow, we're going to reopen, irregardless of what Governor Wolf tells us. And Governor Wolf came out a few days later. It is the most fiery speech he's ever given, and basically said, you're cowards, you're weak. If you don't obey me, you're bailing out in this battle, you're running from the battle. I mean, coming out of the mouth of this guy here. And then he turned around and said, if you do this, you'll not get federal aid. If you do this, you will not receive any help from the state. If you do this, I'll take away your business licenses. And if you do, I'll fine you. So he was okay with releasing 2,000 criminals and putting felons on the street, but he's bent on arresting God-fearing, upstanding Pennsylvania citizens who just want to live and exercise their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to run their businesses.
Now, there's an enforcement issue here, because in my state here and in my very county, just today, the county sheriff said, look, we're not going to enforce the governor of Illinois' executive orders, and we're going to let the people do as they may. We're not going to go out and arrest people. Are you seeing a similar uprising across your state with county sheriffs pushing back against these executive orders?
Yeah, so that's the good news. You know, all elections matter. A lot of people used to blow off local election, county elections here, and now we're seeing how important every election is. And we have 67 counties in Pennsylvania, and we have about 20 sheriffs who came out and said, I'm not going to enforce what I view as non-constitutional, extra-constitutional edicts, because they're not laws, issued by the governor. And we've had about 20 or so DAs, district attorneys in each county, rise up and say, no, we're not going to punish business owners as well who choose to be open. And that gives us all some hope. Sadly, the governor's threats did have an effect. Several county commissioners have decided to join the fight, to leave and just start reopening on a Friday. At least 4 counties chickened out as a result. And that's exactly what the governor had hoped to do. It was actually on the phone for the first time in his 6 years in office with the county commissioners. Usually has an underling doing that, and convinced a bunch of them to bail out on us. So it's divide and conquer. And so this is going to drag out. And that's why I really hope President Trump can weigh in and pitch in a little bit on this fight. So we need help.
Now, earlier today, you were with other state elected officials at a barbershop that was threatened with closure by 2 state police earlier in the week. So what is the situation, though? As I mentioned, you said county sheriffs, but you still have state enforcement. So you have state police. So how do these two, are they colliding with each other as far as jurisdictionally? What's the situation with that?
Yeah, so I think it was Monday or Tuesday, 2 police officers showed up outside of Harrisburg in Cumberland County, and they came to Shep's Barbershop, and Brad, the barber, runs his shop, and he decided he was going to open up on Monday. He had nothing to lose. He's about to lose everything. He can't feed his family, can't pay his bills. And 2 police, unfortunately, I don't know why they feel like they have to, knock on the door. Why can't they just drive by and say, looks good to me? But, overzealous police officers are violating our trust. And I love the police, and my people love the police too. And so we're asking for mutual respect. But he came out and he did exactly as I advise people do, is you go out with the camera and be respectful, but have the camera. And, hey, officer, what's going on? Well, are you open for business? Yes, I am. Well, you can't be because the governor says. And Brad replied, well, I have to feed my family. So unless you're going to do a fundraiser to pay my bills and bring some food in the house, I have to be open. Well, you got to be closed. And Brad responded, what law have I broken? Because this is not a law. I didn't vote on this. I'm a senator. It's an edict, a proclamation from the governor. And Brad made a good case for his constitutional rights. And the police still said, this is your warning. Next time we come, you're going to get a letter. And after that, we're going to start hammering you with fines. I'm paraphrasing now. And the letter from the governor that he's going to get in a couple of days here is absolutely atrocious. It's all full of threats and bullying, and we're going to bring you down. You're going to pay court costs. I mean, it's one of the most disgusting things, overreach and abuse of power I've seen from any governor in the history of this nation.
Well, taking a look at the press release that was just issued by my own county sheriff, one of the points that he made in that letter, to stating he wasn't going to enforce the governor of Illinois' executive orders, was that there's no precedent, there's no law for them to actually enforce, and that actually puts the officers at a liability, because now they're wide open for lawsuits because they're enforcing something that doesn't exist. When you mentioned that these were law enforcement officers, were they local? Were they county? Were they state? What was the jurisdiction that was attempting to enforce these executive edicts in Pennsylvania, where you were at the barbershop?
Yeah, they were Pennsylvania police, PSP, we call them state police. And unfortunately, they work for the governor. And obviously, the guy leading the force is appointed by the governor, and so they're tied in closely with him. I'm really disappointed to report I have a local gym, Alpha Fitness, down the street by Chambersburg, real close to where I live here. The police came into the owner of the gym, Jeremiah Snyder. He opened up. He's in the same position, has 2 small kids to feed, a family to take care of, bills to pay, just like everyone else out there in the real world, unlike Governor Wolf's experience in life. And so he opened up, and sadly, 3 police officers, 3 state police came in. And I know the captain that was there, and my heart's broken. This guy was a Marine, and he should know better. He took an oath on the Constitution, not on the orders of a governor. And he's coming in and he was threatening Jeremiah. So we're probably going to have a similar rally here in support of Jeremiah. But this is the epitome of overreach and tyranny, and we can't allow this to stand. I never thought when I was in the Army that I'd be standing here fighting for our basic freedoms and rights as an American in Pennsylvania. I never dreamed of that happening here. And you expect that over in Bosnia, or in Afghanistan and Iraq, but in America, in Pennsylvania, the birthplace of liberty, where a new birth of freedom was fought for in the Civil War, it's just unimaginable to me we've come this far.
Well, there certainly are enemies, foreign and domestic, we should be worried about. Now let's talk about what happened on Monday. You held a rally in Harrisburg, formally calling for the resignation of the Secretary of Health, Levine. Could you explain the latest on this?
Yeah. So on Monday, and we know a lot more today than we did Monday, but I was looking at the record of our Secretary of Health. It just, I would say, medical malpractice and gross incompetence. And that's, once again, a hyperbole. Here's why I say that, why I demanded the resignation of Levine. Levine came out 2 months ago saying, hey, this virus has proven to be extremely fatal to those with certain conditions and also to the elderly. So we have to protect our elderly. And then on the 18th of March, Levine issued a memo, an order saying that elder care homes, long-term assisted homes, have to take back COVID-19 positive patients from hospitals to free up hospital beds in Pennsylvania. So they took positive cases, put them into nursing homes, and unleashed a plague amongst the most vulnerable. And that's resulted in 2/3 of all our deaths in Pennsylvania have come from these homes as a result of Levine's mismanagement and gross negligence, and also 2/3 of our cases statewide. So I went up and with great flair went to the governor's office in the Capitol building. And he's not there. The door's locked. So the guy's missing in action. He's absent without leave. So we had to email it to him. The next day we come to find out that while Levine is ordering COVID-19 positive folks back in the nursing home and assisted care systems, that he decided to take out mom, the secretary's own mom, get mom out of a facility and has his mom in Hershey Lodge in safety with 24/7 care. So this is true elitism. Do as I say, not as I do, and going to look out for mom, realizing that mom was going to be vulnerable there, but the rest of you, your parents, grandparents don't matter. I mean, can you imagine this in America?
Well, I want to really drive this point home, because we're learning that Wolf, along with the Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine, did have family moved out of the personal care home after ordering all nursing homes and long-term facilities in the state to accept CV patients from hospitals. Okay, so they knew that their own patient transfer policies made nursing homes literally a death sentence. And now we need to know, what's the backlash that they are receiving? This is a clear abuse of power.
Yeah, so the first thing here is obviously there's going to be lawsuits, and already has been lawsuits brought for negligence and this awful, terrible decision-making process that the secretary has undergone here, and giving information and sharing information with the secretary's family, but not with the rest of Pennsylvania. What would have been wrong with saying, hey, look, we're afraid of something happening bad in our elder care systems. Maybe you should think about taking out your family members, your loved ones here, and protecting them. But instead, snuck out there. It took a private detective on his own time to find out this happened here. We started hearing rumors that Secretary Levine's mom was missing from the home where she was located, and then sure enough, a private investigator found her in a suite at Hershey Lodge, about 40 minutes outside of Harrisburg. And the double standard is just the epitome of corruption.
It's really sad that we're seeing this happen in this country. And this is really just a microcosm. It's happening in your state. It's happening in my state, New York. I mean, there's so many facets to this. But I want to talk about the qualifications. What qualifications does Pennsylvania's health secretary have for the position besides suffering from mental health herself?
Well, the qualifications is a doctor's degree in pediatrician, and also expertise in eating disorders. So clearly that Levine lacks policy experience, doesn't have any experience in epidemiology or pandemics, and was definitely woefully ill-prepared for this position. And I say that because the secretary has oversight over these elder care homes. There's about 2,000 across Pennsylvania. It's one of the oldest populations in the nation, by the way. And so the gross negligence here, and the secretary is responsible and culpable for what happened in those homes, where 2/3 of our state's deaths and cases coming out of there was as a result of that memo issued by Secretary Levine on 18 March. It just shows you how important it is to have somebody with the right credentials and training and skills for the job, and not any other reason why they should be hired other than that they're qualified.
Well, I want to say thank you for your service to this country abroad, and now you're defending freedom here on your home territory. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, obviously there's some mixed feelings about that. I'm glad to be in this fight here. Obviously, there's other opportunities when I retire from the Army with all the credentials I have, and I'm thankful to be on the front lines here and fighting for freedom. On the other hand, though, it's really troubling that we once our basic rights, our basic freedoms, our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, going back to our Declaration, that the very essential and soul of America now is at risk. There's a 1-minute speech by Ronald Reagan in 1961 where he talks about, if we don't do our due diligence here, we'll be, God forbid, we'll be in our older years sitting on a porch telling our children and grandchildren what it was like to be free. Benjamin Franklin, when he came out of Carpenter's Hall, Liberty Hall in Philadelphia in 1787 at the end of the Constitutional Convention, was confronted by a lady who said, "What do we have, Mr. Franklin, a republic or a king?" And Benjamin Franklin said rightly, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. Now it's our turn to keep it. And man, this is a fight, and we have to stay diligent. Otherwise, all the sacrifices of the 200 plus years would have been for naught." And so this is a fight and struggle for the soul of the nation. We're a constitutional republic. We have lots of options and angles in our hands here. Of course, you have the legislator, and I have several bills being pushed forward in the legislature and General Assembly in Pennsylvania to protect us from this in the future. But also, it's a exercise of judicial branch. And I'm also encouraging people to reach out to the President and Attorney General Barr to describe how our essential rights have been trampled upon.
Tell me about these bills you have introduced, and what's your intention to fight back with the legislative process?
Yeah, the first one I'm co-sponsoring with a House member, Representative Russ Diamond, and my version of it is Senate Resolution 323, which would end this emergency order, which just ended. But I need 2/3 of a vote, sadly, not a simple majority. I need a veto-proof majority, which means I need several Democrats to break ranks in the Senate. And only yesterday was the first day that any of them ever broke with the governor for important votes on issues like this. So there is hope finally. On the other side here, we passed legislation yesterday in both the House and the Senate here to open up key sectors of our industry and society, and not to wait for the governor to give the blessing. And the final is legislation to prevent any future emergency declarations from dragging on. So the next bill that I have, I'm co-sponsoring with Senator Dave Argel from Schuylkill County, limits any declaration to 10 days, and the General Assembly, the House and the Senate would have to come back to reauthorize it every 10 days. And so this way we won't drag on for 3 months or into perpetuity with the governor's whims and wishes.
Now, before we go, do you have any final thoughts, any points you really want to drive home for the people of Pennsylvania or America at large?
You know, for far too many years, people stood off on the sidelines and just blew off elections, weren't involved politically. And this is a result of, I'd say, of standing aside. So this is really a shot across the bow for us, saying we have to rise up, and the people really are. They're really interested in being involved in politics. Even people from the Anabaptist traditions, the pacifist, non-involvement traditions here are rising up and being involved now. On the other side here is how valuable is your freedom. And so we've taken it for granted because we've had it for several hundred years, and it's just come and gone, and it's always been there. And now our essential freedoms have been under assault and under attack in our nation, especially Pennsylvania, ironically, the birthplace of liberty. You can't make this stuff up. And we have to rise up and exercise our constitutional rights. And are we a free people? Are we going to be bullied and told what to do? And finally is diligence. It's really troubling to see when we have a governor who's overstepped any power of any governor in the history of Pennsylvania, going back to even the colonial period. It's almost 300 years. And truly, he's the most powerful governor in our history. Even Governor Curtin, who had the state when Robert E. Lee invaded Pennsylvania in 1863 for what we call the Battle of Gettysburg. Even Governor Curtin didn't have the power to pick winners and losers, to pick essential, non-essentials, to open and close, and pick life and death. Not even he did. So we have to rein in the power of the governor. And all governors should have checks and balances. The lack of oversight and accountability and transparency is indicative of the corruption. And the last thought here, anyone who ever thought that socialism was a good idea, this is just a little glimpse into the window of socialism. And it's horrific and awful, and we have to stand against this and never let this happen in America.
Absolutely. Amen to that. I want to bring up your